Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
How you doing this week?
Excellent. How you doing?
I am I'm real into it, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can only assume you mean the fact that Aether Revolt is here, and when there's a new set, it's a brewer's paradise. And what's more, the only time for brewing as good as a rotation, or like in the same league as a rotation, is after a very radical change to the ban list, right?
I mean, like, it's like we
format.
knew there was going to be stuff happening, right? But I was like, I couldn't wait to see what the deck lists were going to look like. And it's like, not even, like, the Pro Tour hasn't happened yet. It's just the first open weekend. And there's already, like, all kinds of new cards being played. We're seeing a little bit of revisiting from recent favorites. Like, it's hard to say.
Well, I mean, previously, right? Like obviously, like Green Black was the best deck before. So now everything's completely different. And wait. No, I'm just kidding.
Look,
no,
man,
obviously like, Green Black was one of the better decks, but the fact that like Green Black was was like a clear top two before, and that Green Black was one of the top two decks or top three decks, I guess one of the top two decks this weekend.
Top two decks, two of the top four decks, two of the top five decks before.
But like these are totally different Green Black decks.
Yeah, but there's like four different ones, right? Like they happen to have the same colors, but like the decks do completely different stuff. Like all of them are somewhat reminiscent of old strategies, but they're like.
It's a little generous to say that they're all completely different.
They are at least different enough to be going in some pretty principally different directions, and I have no illusions that these are going to be the decks that are going to be top 8 at the Pro Tour, but they're still sweet to talk about right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's elements that we can learn from all of them.
And the thing is, there are other decks that aren't Green-Black decks that did well, just not as well as the Green-Black decks did across multiple tournaments. But there are also good things going on in those decks, and I'm really happy to see one of like the old favorites that was really badly held down by Smuggler's Copter and Emrakul come back. And I mean, like, and then also, you know what? Let's start here. Well, actually, first let's start by saying this is the Top Level Podcast. I'm very excited, Michael J. Flores. We are talking Aether Revolt. We are talking Aether Revolt and Constructed. Top Level Podcast is a podcast about Constructed. That's what we're going on. This week's episode is brought to you by you, the people who are supporting Top Level Podcasts on Patreon, in particular, Adam Hartman this week. Thank you, Adam Hartman.
Thank you.
Secondly, I want to talk about Standard. The Pro Tour coming up very soon is Standard, but I want to take 10 seconds to point out you were almost, I want to say, dead center in the middle of the target. Modern, I don't know if you checked out the Modern Classic from Columbus. The number 2 second place finishing deck in that Modern Classic was an Abzan Cord deck played by Gerbil Jupiter, and it played exactly the combo that you talked about in last week's episode, which was Renegade Rallier plus Safi Erksdottir.
Very clever way to get extra mileage out of the Collected Company sort of thing, because like Collected Company obviously works really well with all the Malira combos too. But one of the big advantages to using Collected Company with Renegade Rallier and Safi Erksdottir is that Renegade Rallier is just such an incredible card at instant speed. When you just crack your fetch land, cast Collected Company, flip Renegade Rallier and a Kitchen Finks, and then get back, a Voice of Resurgence, suddenly you are destroying your opponent's attack. So you get the benefit of a really, really, really good legit backup plan, while also still having the infinite combos. And that's to say nothing of Renegade Rallier, its use getting back fetch lands, because you can just play Renegade Rallier and then play the fetch land out of your graveyard.
Oh, like a turn 2 Renegade Rallier, right? You can go like first turn Noble Hierarch, second turn, crack a fetch land, Renegade Rallier, and you're like ramping up. You're like baby Primeval Titan here.
Right, now you're already at 4 mana, and that's not even counting if you play a land next turn. Like, even if your opponent were to kill your bird, you still have enough mana for Collect the Company next turn. But what's more, you have enough mana so that when you Chord of Calling, you can go get whatever you need. Like, you could actually cast a Viscera Seer next turn and still just Chord up a Safi Eriksdotter.
Oh, and then go to town, right? So
right.
If you have, so that's just like allows you to go through your deck, right? If you have Viscera Seer, Renegade Rattler, and Safi Eriksdotter. But if you have Anafenza, Kintry Spirit in play, you get infinite power, right? Is that what happens?
But so there's a variety of combos. I mean, if you have Anafenza, you get infinite +1/+1 counters wherever you want. And if you while you're digging all the way through your deck, you can just keep going until you find you can keep going until you actually get to your Anafenza. So like you are making progress cycling through, but you also have the ability to potentially set up some of the other combos like Kitchen Finks with Malera and in general just getting infinite triggers. I mean, each time you're using the Renegade Rallier, you're making a profit. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that there's a lot to be said for the ability to stack your deck at will.
Oh, well, if you're going to put it that way, it sounds a little bit unfair, and we are talking about a green-white creature deck. So that's kind of, maybe off topic. Stacking your deck. Like, you're intimating that I could just set up all Chord of Callings for the next few turns. That would actually be a generous thing to do to your opponent, I think. I think that's like playing it on easy mode if that's the only thing that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of interesting stuff in this deck. I think it's also kind of interesting the Tireless Tracker, too, just in terms of having it as a bullet to help you grind. Like against a Jund deck or a Grixis deck?
I was wondering, it's just one copy of Tireless Tracker. I guess you've got like fetchlands and stuff. I guess that he's buddies with Renegade Rallier. I guess he's buddies with +1/+1 counters in general.
Yeah, and he's just he's a Chord of Calling target so that you can like go get something that will just take over the game in a grindy mid-range matchup.
Yeah, you could probably like set up a situation where you can just get like 2 or 3 free cards out of him, and even if they deal with him, like you've got like some pretty good cards in your deck, and she's got you a little bit ahead, a single card.
Yep.
But that is modern. Let's talk standard. You want to start with the standard open?
Sure. That makes the most sense.
All right. So standard open. Top half of the standard open was black, green, black, green, black. Oh, you.
Well, sorry. Yeah. I do want to. Okay. So, black, green was first, second, and third.
Yeah.
The top 64 tells an interesting story. The top 64 contained 24 copycat decks, 12 Jeskai and 12 4-color with green as the fourth color. That's the Felidar Guardian Saheeli Rai deck.
Mm-hmm.
Lots and lots and lots, just an absurd amount of copycat decks, and they did well. 2
in the top 8.
The black green. There were lots of variations. The green-black stuff was very interesting. There were some that were more green-black, some that were more black-green, some that were more aggressive, some with more delirium, some with more energy. There was quite a blend, some with some +1/+1 counteraction. There was quite a diverse mix of green-black and black-green decks, but there ended up being 8 black-green decks, 8 green-white decks, and then the numbers really start to fall after that, with the only other big archetype being Mardu vehicles.
So no Marvels to be seen?
One Marvel deck in the top 64. One Marvel deck. There were 4 control decks spread out between like a variety of different color combinations. 3 Grixis Emerge decks. just a smattering, lots of rogue decks. One of this, one of that, one of this, one of that. But the big archetypes seem to be the most popular deck and the second most popular deck were two different shades of Copycat. And then came green, black, and green, white, and then finally Mardu vehicles. So it seems like those are the first 5 decks to beat are Copycat, Jeskai Copycat, 4-color Copycat, the black, green, black type of stuff, green, white, and Mardu vehicles.
So that Aetherworks Marvel deck just snuck in at 64th, right? So
yep.
I barely even made the cut to top 64.
Right.
The literal worst possible top 64 position. So
well, they're all tied for dead last.
Kind of, but it's narrative. All right, where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think we have to start with Brennan DeCandio's, and I apologize if I'm butchering the name, but Brennan's very impressive back-to-back wins. Back-to-back open wins, and this time winning with black-green Delirium.
Yeah, so Brennan has a black-green Delirium deck. It's combining a bunch of the different things that we've seen before. He's got like 3 Traverse the Uvenwald, which are helping to shape out his mana base. Only 23 lands and 3 Traverse the Uvenwald to start off. But then he's got, a mix of different threats, including, a little Fatal Push action, a little To the Slaughter action, and then 4 Mind Rack Demons, 4 Walking Ballistas. Like the numbers are. I think
so. He's got a package. He's got a package. He called his shot beforehand. Said he just had the total best deck. Like he had it was just like, and he even said what it was beforehand. He's just like, yeah. He said Walking Ballista is just the best card in Aether Revolt for Standard. It's just the defining card. He said it truly is Hangarback Walker 2.0. And it was absolutely impressive throughout the whole weekend. A lot of people used Walking Ballista, to be sure. However, very few people used every part of Walking Ballista the way that Brennan did.
So Walking Ballista, we mentioned this a little bit last week, right?
Yes.
But I think it's even more impressive than, and it seems at first blush. I was doing a little testing for Dublin last week, and I was thinking about, what's like a bullet that you could play in a Traverse the Uvenwald deck that, irrespective of color, how do you want to do this? Like maybe play like a Thalia. If you get the Thalia down, you can make the copycats come into play tapped. But the thing about Walking Ballista in a lot of shells, especially as a 4-of in a deck like this, is you just play it as a Mog Fanatic on turn 2, and you really slow down the copycat combo. If they go down on Saheeli Rai to do the first copy, you could just shoot to kill Saheeli. So they're probably not going to do that. Like, if they know how this works, they're probably not going to do that. But the fact that you can set it up to be in that position is actually very problematic for them, because it's like a time walk, right? This is like a really strong tempo play. You're doing this thing. It has this action. There's I can't actually expose my card right now like this. So I have to think about something that may take it up. There's all kinds of stuff they have to start thinking about. And when you're playing it in the context of a deck that has all these things going on, for example, it's an artifact.
Specifically, like the spot where that would be most likely to come up actually is the fact that when you play Walking Ballista for 0, you can To the Slaughter immediately and Fatal Push.
Yeah.
So if you have exactly 4 mana, you can play your Ballista, be able to Revolt for your Fatal Push and To the Slaughter, kick it both ways because you just added creature, artifact, and instant all to your graveyard at the same time. So like that is one valuable line of play, but there's so many different things you can do with Walking Ballista. For instance, Brennan's list might push the Ballista the hardest out of the ones from this past week. He's got Winding Constrictor so that the Ballista comes down as a 2/2 out the gate. And remember, you can shoot one counter off and keep the other counter on. Additionally, you can each 4 mana you pay, now you're putting 2 +1/+1 counters on at a time, which is an implied
Constrictors really just doubles them up here.
Right. So the Ballista will come down. Like, you can actually just go turn 2 Winding Constrictor, turn 3 Ballista, and then turn 4, you might be able to just put 2 counters on the Ballista and lock some opponents out because you just start killing things so quickly. And this is to say nothing of the fact that the Ballista is so much stronger of a play than Hangarback Walker when you do it for like 4 or 6.
Yeah,
you know,
so
like
that's a great point, right? So if you go turn 2 Winding Constrictor, turn 3 Ballista, right? It starts with 2 counters. Then if you pay 4, it gets 2 more counters, so it's 4. You're now in a position that it doesn't just kill a Saheeli that's ticking down for 1 counter. You can actually just execute a Felidar Guardian with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Gideon, too. Like, you can just have that all under control. Additionally, Rishkar Pima Renegade, our preview card from a couple weeks back, as we predicted, Rishkar Pima Renegade is the bridge tying so many of these things together, and it is fueling some of the craziness because when you play Rishkar and put a +1/+1 counter on your say you put a +1/+1 counter on your Winding Constrictor, right? Of course you're bashing, but you also just have so much extra mana. You even have the ability to use, if you had a Walking Ballista already in play, you can use it for mana as well. But it's actually very easy to make a Walking Ballista where, you know, for 6 or even 8 mana ahead of schedule. And what's more, you can use Rishkar Pima Renegade to ensure that you can play Verdurous Gearhulk on turn 4. And all the counters you're putting down, if you put them on Walking Ballista, it can just fire them off. If you put the counters on Grim Flayer, you can trample over. If you put the counters spread out, well, suddenly Winding Constrictor goes nuts, right? Like, if you Verdurous Gearhulk with a Winding Constrictor, each creature that you put a +1/+1 counter on actually gets +2/+2.
Oh, yeah. So every time you do any kind of transfer, Winding Constrictor is just getting another opportunity to get more triggers. So,
going actually touching on just briefly 2 other aspects of the Walking Ballista. It is a source of revolt at instant speed to ensure that you can use Fatal Push to full value when you need to. And that it is an artifact creature actually matters a lot because this is a deck without any self-mill besides the Grim Flayer and the Mindrack Demon. This deck is really relying on Mindrack Demon to enable your Delirium. And having access to Walking Ballista makes it so that you have so much more diverse of a mix of card types without having to resort to Liliana or Nissa. And part of the theory is that right now, Nissa and Liliana are being targeted because of just how popular, like how many people are fighting Gideon, and a lot of the things that fight Gideon end up fighting Nissa and Liliana.
Oh, yeah, like Brennan himself has Ruinous Path in his deck. We see this card back. That's a card that's good against all those cards you just mentioned.
Yes, and I like the use of 2 Evolving Wilds. You don't have too many tap lands in a deck like this, but it does help both Tireless Tracker and Fatal Push. To say nothing of Delirium, of course. So I thought this was definitely a really cool deck. But I wanted to see what you thought of the sideboard 3 Yahenni's Expertise.
Oh, those stick out. Can't miss those. Right, so Yahenni's Expertise has got multiple things going on for it in this deck. So, obviously, if you just look at the cards that Brennan's got, he has like a fair number of cards from Tireless Tracker to Grim Flayer to, Ruinous Path that can be cast for free by Yahenni's Expertise. He also has big creatures like Mindrack Demon and Verdurous Gearhulk that will stick around after Yahenni's Expertise. So, pick your spot. You can, have a Verdurous Gearhulk or a Mindrack Demon, or maybe even like a large Walking Ballista in play.
Well, Grim Flayer can definitely get big enough, right?
Oh, sure.
And the fact that when you drop Rishkar Pima Renegade, when you do the natural curve of turn 2 Constrictor, turn 3 Pima Renegade, they both live through the Yahenni's Expertise on the following turn.
That's super unfair and mean. think that I would lodge a complaint.
Yeah, Henny's expertise also stacks well with Walking Ballista, because even when you are only creature in play as a Ballista, and you know you're going to lose it, the fact that you can use the Ballista to ping your opponent's Archangel Avacyn to make sure that Henny's expertise will finish it off.
Oh, you can take down an Ishkanar or something that way.
Right.
I did find it curious. I mean, I would imagine, you look at a deck like this, 25 creatures, 12 non-planeswalker spells, 23 lands, in a format that now no longer has Smuggler's Copter. I would have thought that a strategy like this would want to take advantage at least of Liliana, if not Nissa. But the only planeswalker we see in the 75 is one of the more expensive Nissa, not the
two. There's two. There's also Obnixilis, right?
Oh, there's Obnixilis. I apologize. Yeah, but 2 different 5-drop ones.
Right.
And we're actually in a position where I think at least like the level 1 thinking, if not level 0 thinking, is that the 3-mana planeswalkers have now regained some of the cachet that they had lost due to Smuggler's Copter. And, here we see the called shot top performing deck of the weekend ignores those, even though they're directly in color and have, Nissa in particular has wonderful synergy with all these cards that he's playing, right? Like, Winding Constrictor into Nissa is a pretty good team.
Oh, yeah, to be sure. And Nissa being able to put counters down with Rishkar for a big mana boost, or on Walking Ballista in order to be able to shoot more stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Now, that said, I think Nissa could be sweet, but it isn't necessarily, like, this is a deck that already is making really good use of the 3 spot on the curve. But I actually thought it was really interesting how well Liliana the Last Hope actually matches up against a format full of Walking Ballistas. There's just, like, so many people are playing Walking Ballista, but if you're on the play, and of course everything's better when you're on the play, but like when you're on the play and you play a turn 3 Liliana against an opponent who played a turn 2 Walking Ballista, you can just plus ping their Walking Ballista, and you're really doing it.
Oh, you have them. That's horrible for them. Right?
Yes.
Like, that's just pure card advantage, and the only thing that they get out of it is a little bit of a delirium boost, but one of their best cards is now in the graveyard.
Right.
And so you're up, right? You're up in resources, literally.
Oh, yeah. So, I did want to point out one other interaction that's kind of important that is kind of made possible or made much more likely by Fatal Push, which is Grim Flayer's Trample. Grim Flayer, you can now get into spots where when Grim Flayer is still just a 2/2, you can attack an opponent that you can often fork opponents in spots where like, for instance, let's say your opponent has a Kari Zev Skyship Raider and a Bomat Courier, and then you attack with Grim Flayer. Well, if they block with both and you Fatal Push Kari Zev, you are still going to trample over and kill the Bomat Courier. And you can do so either way, regardless of if they double block or single block, but they're going to have to commit before they even know, because that's perhaps, I'm doing a bad job of, you know what, it's if they block with, like, say, an Inventor's Apprentice, for instance, and Bomat Courier. But either way, having more instant speed interaction that can remove a blocker after it's already blocked, in a deck that has 8 Tramplers, 4 Grim Flayers and 4 Verdurous Gearhulks.
I was actually wondering what you thought about this. Fatal Push is like one of, if not the most kind of under the spotlight new cards from Aether Revolt.
Yep.
We see it here being played in Brennan's deck to the first open win. What do you think of only 2 copies main deck and 2 copies overall in the entire 75? Like, I keep looking at it.
That seems totally reasonable.
I feel like reasonable. I want to play. Like, are there no fast decks? Like, I think I want to take out somebody's Grimflayer. I feel like that's something I might want to do. I feel like it's probably a great tempo opportunity.
Yeah, but like it's not like you want to sideboard in Fatal Push for the mirror match. No, Fatal Push would not be good in the mirror match. They have Verdur's Gearhulk and Mindrack Demon, Rishkar, and Tireless Tracker are actually slightly awkward to be able to interact with Fatal Push sometimes. Like, it's just a little off balance.
Fatal Push kills Walking Ballista no matter how big it is.
Right. Right,
but, that's true. You'll take some hit, right? But it can at least do that, right? You can have like a 15-15 Walking Ballista and Fatal Push can get rid of it.
Right, but like, there's only so much... and maybe, I think it's totally reasonable that you might want to consider playing 4, but I think it's also totally reasonable to play less because Grasp of Darkness is so much more versatile. And
twice as much mana and double.
It does.
Right? Like,
it does.
That's not an insignificant ask in a 2-color deck.
No. But this week we did see already just how popular some of these more expensive cards are. But there was actually the second place finisher, if you don't mind if we jump over, had kind of some of the stuff you've been talking about, like Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. And this is a little bit different of a green-black deck. Instead of any amount of Delirium, like instead of any amount of Traverse action or anything, this is a deck that is trying to lean into Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
Yeah, so this deck has a bunch of new cards. It has both Aether Sphere Harvester and Glint Sleeve Siphoner. So Glint Sleeve Siphoner is kind of the new Dark Confidant, right? So
I think it's more of a Pain Seer, personally. Which is still plenty good. I mean, it's better than Pain Seer.
Well, yeah, so it's got Menace, right? So the problem with Pain Seer is you can get in there, but if they just block, you're just never going to draw an extra card, right? Or they'll trade, or they at least have the onus is on the opponent to figure out what they want to do about your Pain Seer, right? So Glint Sleeve Siphoner, try saying that 5 times fast, is one in a beam for a 2/1.
5 times fast.
Which is why I was inspired to call it a Bob. It is a human rogue with Menace, so it's a little harder to block, right? So you can't just single block it with one token creature, right, to take it out. And it has a bunch of cool text. When Glint Sleeve Siphoner enters the battlefield or attacks, you get an energy. So, boom, you get an energy. First time it attacks, you get an energy. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay energy. If you do, draw a card and you lose 1 life. So that's the kind of the Bob action on it. So there's multiple energy things going on in this deck. It's got Glint Sleeve Siphoner, it's got Aether Hub, and it's got Aether Sphere Harvester. So this is a new...
It also has Winding Constrictor, which is important to note. If you play your Winding... Right, because then your Glint Sleeve Siphoner comes into play, gives you 2 energy immediately, and you're already off to the races. Plus, every turn, it's getting enough to pay for itself.
Yeah, and this has got, old hat cards like Servant of the Conduit, which are friends with energy counters too, right? So Aether Sphere Harvester is a new vehicle. It costs 3 for a 3/5 vehicle. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy, and you can pay an energy to give it lifelink, and it is a super low crew cost of 1. So I think this card might have some legs, and by legs I mean
I think it's not close. I think Aether Sphere Harvester is one of the... I mean, it's a slam dunk for top 10 cards in the set. And I think that Aether Sphere Harvester has lots of really important and durable things going for it. The fact that it has a crew cost of just 1 is so convenient when you want to be playing Walking Ballista anyway. Walking Ballista is like a very, very natural way to crew a Harvester. And the Harvester being a 3/5 is very exciting because and at that a 3-cost 3/5, it's very exciting because it dodges Grasp of Darkness, and it is difficult to Fatal Push because you only expose it to the Fatal Push when you want. It's not just Fatal Push at will, so your opponent can't just Fatal Push it on their own turn like they could with a variety of other things. Like if they if they were to, for instance, say, use the last counter on a planeswalker or have creatures die in combat. They don't get they don't have the option to do it except when you put it in harm's way yourself. And then what's more, it being a flyer that can lifelink is actually like fantastic for racing, particularly in a deck that can distribute +1/+1 counters, whether by Rishgar or Verdurous Gearhulk or Nissa, whatever. Those +1/+1 counters are huge when put on a flying threat like Aether Sphere Harvester.
So this deck is pretty interesting because I think it's been a great racing deck because Aether Sphere Harvester has flying, right? So it means it's more likely, you've got a threat and come down on turn 3 or whatnot. Super low crew cost, can connect with face, and it's super easy to get the lifelink online, right? Like it's very low cost, right? So,
it starts with 2 free shots right out the gate.
So great racing from that perspective, and I don't even understand how it's possible we've just kind of forgotten this card exists, right? But Ye Old Trader of Get is in the main deck, right? Remember how great that was? Where you're like turn 3 or turn 4 Kalidas, followed by Verdurous Gearhulk. Like, you're talking about some serious life point swings available with that amount of lifelink, especially 7-drop. Get in there with lifelink from Kalidas and potentially also Aether Sphere Harvester. So I think this deck it's interesting to me if you contrast Steven's deck to Brennan's deck. This is kind of what I was getting at the top of the cast. They're very different decks, despite the fact that they're both playing Rishgar, Winding Constrictor, Tireless Tracker, and Verdurous and Walking Ballista, right? Like these, there's a huge amount of overlap, but like Steven's deck is like basically no Delirium theme. He's got this like total racing kind of attitude rather than Delirium into that, kind of more. I would say like Brennan's deck is kind of more angles. Is that fair? And
yeah, I think that's fair.
And this one's kind of like I have this thing. I think if I go in this direction and I kind of push it, it's going to be strong.
I think that they are, even though they go about. It's funny because they have enough cards in common that at first you're like, oh, they're similar, but then they get to the punchline 2 very different ways, and you're like, oh, these are 2 totally different decks. But I actually think that they are deceptively similar in regards to that different thing they do. Aether Sphere Harvester, a lot of why Aether Sphere Harvester is good is why Mind Rack Demon is good. They're both 5 toughness flying creatures, right? Like that's a big deal. And then they both are doing tricky things, taking advantage of Winding Constrictor and Walking Ballista. And not just with each other, but there's a variety of fancy things like Tireless Tracker. Tireless Tracker, every clue you sack is going to give you 2 +1/+1 counters when you have a Winding Constrictor in play. And when you have a Tireless Tracker in play, the clues give you a constant source of revolt when you need it.
It's it's insane to me, absolutely insane, looking at these black-green deck lists, that Sylvan Advocate is nowhere near them, right? Like 6-8 months ago, like couldn't even imagine that guy not being a headliner in these kind of strategies, right? There's just so many different options. Like Walking Ballista is better in these decks. Winding Constrictor is just so central to what these decks want to do. Servant of the Conduit is something, a completely unique thing. It's mind-boggling to me, the direction that these have gone.
That said, I think Sylvan Advocate still has plenty of play in this format, and depending on what deck you're playing, there is a lot of good value to be had by Sylvan Advocate. I just think we're in a spot where green decks have an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, this deck doesn't even have Grim Flare.
Right, because it's not doing the Delirium thing at all. Right? But what's crazy is that you're like, okay, the reason they're not playing Grim Flare is because a Glint Sleeve, Siphoner, right? Like maybe that's the justification or the servant of the conduit. But then you go look at the third place finisher. If you take a look at Andrew Skorik's green-black deck, he actually has 0 Grimflayer and 0 servant of the conduit and 0 glint sleeve siphoner. Instead, he has the usual 4 walking ballista, 4 winding constrictor, which we are more and more starting to see as just being the sort of pace-setting 2 drops of choice. But his discretionary 2-drop is actually Sylvan Advocate.
Sylvan Advocate and Heart of Kiran.
Ah, yes.
Right. So,
and part of the strength of Heart of Kiran in this deck is the fact that he's playing 4 Nissas and 1 Liliana.
So in this deck, I think part of the reason that Sylvan Advocate maybe gets some legs back is because of the 3rd toughness, right? So a turn 2 Sylvan Advocate is a pretty good defender if your plan is to play a Planeswalker on the 3rd turn.
Yeah, and if you play Rishkar into Sylvan Advocate, you get the value of the extra counter for the extra beatdown attack, but you also can use mana post-combat if you need. Like, if you're not even needing to defend yourself.
So what do you think about Heart of Kiran in this deck? It seems like this is a nice little debut for this vehicle. It's got 5 main deck Planeswalkers that are very good at ticking up.
Right, but then it also has the ability to buff it just by, like, for instance, if you play a turn 2 Heart of Kiran and then a turn 3 Planeswalker, sometimes you're just going to end up playing your Rishkar, put a +1/+1 counter on the plant token you made and the Rishkar, and then just tap the Rishkar to crew the Heart of Kiran. There's nothing wrong with that, you know? I mean, Heart of Kiran is... It hits hard.
Your old buddy Catacomb Sifter's back, too, so it would help set up Verdur's Gear Hulk. I think that's kind of odd, Catacomb Sifter, but no Servant of the Conduit.
It's also, like, it looks like this deck is on purpose trying to dodge shock, right? Like, Rishkar, as long as you don't, I mean, you're vulnerable the turn you play him, but you could, in theory, put the counter somewhere else, but you, most of the time, will get a chance to drop Rishkar when your opponent's tapped out and give him a 3 toughness. Winding Constrictor, 3 toughness. Sylvan Advocate, 3 toughness. Catacomb Sifter, 3 toughness. Walking Ballista, you can sacrifice and kill something. This is a green-black deck designed to beat shock, and I think that's why he's avoiding Servant of the Conduit.
I think that's a great point. This deck, there's basically no juicy targets, and I think that your point is especially made given the fact that he's got a couple of Evolving Wilds in the main deck, but then Tireless Tracker out of the sideboard, right?
Right, so, but also Flaying Tendrils out of the sideboard instead of Yaheni's Expertise, because all his creatures have a 3 toughness, so he's going for -2 against the fast aggro decks. So that all his creatures will live.
I think I like Andrew's deck the most because I think it's very clever. I love just like little things like, ooh, you just get like a little bit of percentage in some matchups, and maybe you don't give up too much to get that. One of the things that's super interesting to me about the fact that you look at these top 3 decks from the open, you know, black-green Delirium deck, and then a black-green not Delirium aggro deck, and then a black-green shock-dodging deck. Think about how you would approach sideboarding, or, you know, even just what cards you play out of your deck and which cards you sideboard when you're preparing for these kinds of decks. It kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. They're like 3 very different decks. If you like, hey, here's my package against aggro decks that are faster than I am, that have these kinds of cards. Some of those cards are good against these kind of decks, and some aren't, right? Like, if you're just going to be like, all right, I'm going to bring in shock against decks that I assume have Grimflayer, or I assume have, a Walking Ballista that are going to play in turn 2. It's bad against Andrew, right? And all different fast reactive cards are bad against one of these 3 decks.
I don't know. They some are better than others. How about that? Let's say they have very different values depending on each one. At the end of the day, you still want, like, for instance, you still want Galvanic Bombardment instead of Shock if you're expecting all these green-black decks. And you want Harness Lightning instead of... you'd rather have Harness Lightning, for instance, instead of Declaration in Stone, for example.
So, can we jump from this deck to
let me leave one last note, though, about the Heart of Kiran topic. Well, I think Heart of Kiran is a good card. I think Aether Sphere Harvester is in these decks is more exciting to me.
Well, they cost two different amounts of mana, and so actually, I want to say
they do, but there's so many good 2-drops.
So,
there's just so many. Yeah, go ahead.
That deck to the 4th place deck, Hunter Nance's green-white deck, right? So this is kind of what I wanted to talk a little bit about when I was saying, like, hey, Sylvan Advocate's really not where it once was. Obviously, it was in the 3rd place deck. But I think we have a deck here that's thematically very similar to the 3rd place green-black deck, now in green-white. This is probably my favorite deck of the top 8 because I love the fact that it's brought back this archetype. You know, with no Smuggler's Copter, all of a sudden, Nissa Voice of Zendikar gets so much better, kind of back to where Nissa was prior to Kaladesh. But we see, like, Heart of Kiran has got to be awesome here, right, relative to the 3-mana version, because there's so many Planeswalkers. And we see Sylvan Advocate here as a 3 of, again, I think, is in a position where... And I guess green-white has different options than green-black in terms of its 2-drop selection. Obviously, you're never going to even consider a card like Grimflay or Winding Constrictor in a non-black deck. But that 3rd toughness seems to me, and especially going to the mid-game, great for Planeswalker defense going to turns 3 and 4. What do you think? Green-white tokens, back.
Yes, there's a lot to like here. I did want to mention before we got completely off the topic of green-black, just how much diversity continued down the 64. Without getting too in-depth into their other decks, it's worth noting that in the top, even just the top 32, the following cards all appear in successful green-black decks. Long Tusk Cub, Green Belt Rampager, Bristling Hydra, Blossoming Defenses, Ishkana Graph Widow, and then Grapple with the Past, Vessel of Nascency, Seasons Past, Main Deck Obnixilis. There is such an incredible diversity of green-black decks. We barely scratched the surface. The one thing they all have in common, at least the ones that win, all of them walking ballistas as far as the eye can see. So anyway, switching over to green-white. This deck actually has, well, it doesn't have the option of things like Grim Flayer. It actually has the option of Lambholt Pacifist in a way that the green-black deck can't take full advantage of. Like, yes, the green-black deck could, in theory, play it and just power up the Pacifist and try, which is Rishgar and Nissa. But the fact that this deck also has access to Gideon as an additional, and then the fact that once you have Heart of Kiran in your deck, Lambholt Pacifist has extra value even when it can't attack.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a really great play to be able to play the Pacifist as a follow-up to Heart of Kiran to make sure that you can just get in there.
I mean, it looks to me like Walking Ballista is just a miss here, right? I feel like this deck would have wanted some access to Walking Ballista.
I think Walking Ballista looks great here. I mean, the fact that you can use it with Nissa, you can use it with Rishgar, the fact that it's just an incredibly powerful card. I don't know. I think Walking Ballista would work great here.
But you only like in the quarantine field spot. What?
You only have so many spots. It's I think part of the action here is that you have Thraben Inspector, which is just night and day better than any 1-drop that the green-black deck can come up with. And you also have access to Oath of Nissa to just to find your other stuff more often. And interestingly, I wanted to see what you thought of this. Hunter Nance went ahead and played 2 Authority of the Consuls in his main deck.
I was going to say the exact same thing if you didn't. So Authority of the Consuls is a 1 casting cost, white enchantment, cost W. Creatures your opponent control enter the battlefield tapped. whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life. This card was like literally printed to slow down or stop the copycat combo, right? So, A, any of the cat combo 1/4s come into play, so they can't attack you this turn. And B, they probably shouldn't try to go off given the second line of text. Right? That's it, right? This card, you put it down. If you get it down, they can't go off against you. They can't even try.
Right. I mean, they have. Yeah, it's an awful lot of these copycat decks don't have a way to get it off the table in their main deck. Like that's that's kind of a big deal, but it breaks up some of the other combos as well. Like a number of decks are playing ways to loop Whirler Virtuoso, whether just big or all the way. And it's funny, you can actually sometimes get into spots where if somebody Whirler Virtuosos and makes, they can't just make like 1 million tokens, because first of all, you'll gain 1 million life up front, and then it would take them a full hit just to get you back down to where you were, and another hit after that in order to actually kill you. But if you, for instance, use Hunter Nance's sideboard Fumigate, then they're going to be really wishing they had chosen a more reasonable number than 1 million.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even sure what the exact right number is.
3 million now.
I wouldn't be surprised if the right number is like several hundred.
What if the right number is like 10? Right?
Maybe.
Is that possible?
Yeah, it seems pretty unlikely because, like, why not do 20?
I'm not sure.
The sideboard actually contains one other new card, though, that's kind of noteworthy. SRAM's Expertise.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a couple of new cards. There's also Heroic.
A green-white tokens deck, right? That is one of the premier token-making cards, and in fact, SRAM's Expertise synergizes really well with a bunch of the cards that Hunter's playing. So, SRAM's Expertise costs 2 WW, create 3 colorless servo artifact tokens, creature tokens, and then you can cast a card that costs 3, right? So you could play SRAM's Expertise, drop Nissa, and then plus all the tokens you just made. Like that's a thing. That's a super simple thing you could do, or you could like drop something like a Stasis Snare to take out their big guy, or even a Thalia. There's a lot of good play at 3. And there's not the worst thing in the world to either play a Rishkar or 2-drop, right? There are any number of great 2 casting cost cards in this deck.
Yeah, and I think that Hunter's main deck is already, it already has a little bit of tall access to, and it's like with Sylvan Advocate, Lambholt Pacifist, Verdurous Gearholt. It's kind of nice to have extra options of going wide for the purposes of fighting fast swarm decks. But SRAM's Expertise, actually, it's kind of cute that it gives you an extra avenue for casting Nissa in a deck that only has 16 green sources. Like, 16 is enough that you're usually not going to have too much of a problem. But it is kind of cute that there are going to be spots where sometimes on turn 3 you play your Stasis Snare, and on turn 4 you go SRAM's Expertise, and you have, 3 plains and a forest. But you're still able to get your Nissa down.
So what I like about SRAM's Expertise is if you go like SRAM's Expertise into Nissa, you can plus into a plant token, right? Now you have four tokens in play. If they don't kill your tokens, you can just plus another plant token, drop Westvale Abbey, and make Ormandal, right? That gives you access to 5 tokens, and it's basically with 1 card. I mean, it ends up being a 3-card combo, one of which is a 1-of, but I like finding avenues to flip Ormandal.
Now, which version did you like better out of Hunter's 4th place finishing green white, or the 9th place finisher Zan Syed, who played a green white tokens deck that was relatively similar, but he did have 4 walking ballistas, and then he had 1 Thalia Heretic Cathar instead of the 2 Authority of the Councils. And then he had 1 Archangel Avacyn and 2 Declaration in Stone.
So, obviously I like Zan Syed's playing of Walking Ballista in the main deck. I think Walking Ballista... I'm not in a position right now to disagree with Brendan's contention it's the best card in the set. I think this card it's super impressive to me in the limited amount of play that I've done so far. The fact that it gives like non-shock, non-red decks just a real easy avenue to breaking up the copycat combo is really, really impressive to me.
That's actually one of the biggest points, is that I thought Zan's list was impressive, is that green-white tokens has a natural weakness to copycat. You've got your stasis snares, but then beyond that, you're like, man, and that's part of the reason why Hunter played Authority main deck, is to have this hard answer to catch up a bad matchup. However, if you have 4 Walking Ballistas in your deck,
see, I feel like if it's such a bad matchup, right, and you have like Walking Ballista, it's just a good slowdown card, right? But that's enough if you've got enough offense going on a lot of the time. I would think that you would want to have more cards like Thalia or Authority of the Consuls access. Like, I think that if I were going to play in a tournament where I knew that different variations of the copycat combo were going to be contending for number 1, number 2 most popular archetypes, I would want to be able to slam 4 Authority of the Councils after sideboarding, hit Thalia.
No.
Like, I mean,
it's
I would just want those cards.
Right. You'd rather have a mix, I think. You do want to have a mixture of a few different types, I think, because if you stack nothing but Authority of the Consuls, you start first of all, you get great diminishing returns on Authority of the Consuls, but you end up that person who just has, for instance, you have 3 rest in pieces, and your opponent is just beating you down with Golgari Thugs and Stinkweed Imps the hard way.
Yeah, but I think this deck is less likely to be in that situation because there's so many great creatures. The reason I like Authority of the Console so much is it costs 1. Right? You play it on turn 1.
Great cost.
Like, you just want to increase the frequency of drawing it, right? Like, and if you're going to have a card that costs 1, it's different when you're playing like 3 or 4 copies. You really want one in your opening hand. You really want to play it on turn 1 because starting on turn 2, you have better things to do. You've got like Lambhold Pacifist, which is good for your strategy. You've got Walking Ballista, which is attacking their strategy from a different angle.
Yeah, but you actually want to play Authority of the Consuls on turn 3 is the way you really want to do it, right?
Well, I want to play when I have an open... I mean, obviously I'll play Thraben Inspector on turn 1 if I have the option, right?
Right, but that's... Yeah, I'm just saying that Authority of Consuls doesn't have to come down on turn 1. Often, if you have 1 mana to spend any other way, you might as well just play your Oath of Nissa instead,
That's fair.
Against a copycat deck specifically, certainly in the dark, you want to play the Authority of the Consuls immediately in a lot of spots just because of how good it is if you have some pressure. But, I mean, I don't know.
The card I don't like in this deck is Declaration in Stone. I
think we got to touch one last thing on Authority of the Consuls, though, is that it's an enchantment. This is a deck that already has 4 Oath of Nissas that find creature, land, or planeswalker cards. I'm not sure that you're supposed to just stack tons of Authority of the Consuls, because every Thalia you have in your sideboard, if you have even just 1 more Thalia, you're getting extra mileage out of your Oath of Nissas. As, finding your sideboard cards.
Thalia was my go-to a week ago for anti-copycat sideboard cards. I was really trying to find a way to play 4 Thalias on a lot of sideboards, especially in decks that had cards like Oath of the Nissa or Traverse the Human Wall. But I think that Walking Ballista and Authority of the Consuls, and even Shock, there's a fair number of decks that could play all 4 of these cards, right, all at the same time. You do want to mix it up. I think that Authority of the Consuls has a little bit more... I have more of a bias towards that card, not just because it costs 1, but because it's difficult, I think, for most opponents to be able to answer more than 1. So if you want to talk about having a diminishing return on a sideboard card, yeah, it's true. The second one has almost no text. The only thing it does is make you gain more Soul Warden life, right? Which at infinite is just 2x infinite. It's just no big deal. It's exactly the same thing. But if somebody can answer the first one, they can't necessarily answer the second one. They often don't have enough cards in their deck to be able to do that. And Enchantment is a weird card to answer, right? So a lot of the time people will set up their turn kill this thing and then go off all at once. That's very different from creature, right? Most people can shock a Thalia, for example. Some sort of deal with a Thalia. Even some sort of deal with a Walking Ballista. But I think multiple enchantments not necessarily the case. The thing that I like about this deck also, it's weird to me looking at Hunter's deck. It's the first time I saw a green-white deck in a long time with no Archangel Avacens. I guess Verdus Gearhulk is great in his strategy, especially with Lambhold Pacifist. But, I think green-white has a lot of legs right now. It can go a lot of different directions. I would be very surprised if we got through this leg of Standard, which is, inclusive of both Kaladesh and Aether Revolt, and didn't see some resurgence of the Big Angel package. Right? That was something that we saw a hint of before Kaladesh came out, but I think Gisela and Bruna are going to... If this archetype has legs, that's going to be the breaker. Because I don't think it's realistic to have a deck that's just like, I have a couple of cards that are going to slow down these much more powerful decks, and then I'm going to beat people up with just like only low to mid power cards. Because if you just look at the deck, step back, with the exception of maybe Gideon, like every just proactive offensive card in the green-white strategy is much worse than most of the options in green-black. Like, you just play a fair game against green-black with your green-white deck, you're just going to get outclassed most of the time. They need to have more punch somewhere. Or a way to... Because think about it, like, the Bruna pack is actually good in attrition fights. If the game is going to go a certain length, just get back my good threat, put out something that's hard for you to deal with.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it's also kind of interesting using Giselle in a world with shocks. Like, if people are playing shocks, it's like, I don't know. I think it's definitely interesting. It also interests me, the idea of playing Giselle if Archangel Avacyn is really on the downswing. Like, if people actually are currently off of Archangel Avacyn in, compared to previous months and, the whole past year, I mean, Archangel Avacyn used to just take Giselle's lunch, right? Like, and if Archangel Avacyn has been replaced by Verdus Gearhulk, I mean, Giselle is one of the few cards that you can just, like, race a Verdus Gearhulk without even, like, stopping it. You might literally win the race.
I don't mind playing Giselle into Verdus Gearhulk.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that feels good.
Yeah.
I've done that a few times.
Yeah. Giselle
also out of -4/-4 range.
Well, one of the things I like about Giselle is that Blossoming Defenses is such a good card. It's such a playable card right now, and Rishgar works so beautifully with Blossoming Defenses. So you can actually do a variety of things like go turn 2 Sylvan Advocate, turn 3 Rishgar. Your Rishgar allows your Sylvan Advocate to get in there for 3 and still hold up Blossoming Defenses, so you don't have a shields down moment when your opponent plays their 3rd land, and so they can't, like, Stasis Snare, Ruinous Path, anything. But then on your following turn, you can actually drop Bruna, and still, like, you can actually attack with both of your creatures and drop Bruna, or not Bruna, Giselle, I'm sorry. You can attack with both your creatures and drop Giselle and still have Blossoming Defense up.
So the thing I love about what you just said is it just inspired me about, like, slow playing Giselle. So instead of playing it with 4 mana, you could play it with 5, right?
Right.
If all I'm going to do is leave up
and all your land tap,
right? So
all your land tap too, and you attack with other creatures. But you have the maximum plausible deniability.
But the slow play here is it just reminds me of, like, so many opportunities to play better. Because I don't know if you remember this, but we were playing, I think, in an invitational once, and I could have played Jace the Mind Sculptor with Mana Leak open, but instead I played Consecrated Sphinx and ended up losing a very close game because I had made that decision. And you looked over at me, you're like, it's been 20 years, and you really just tap all your mana every turn. I left, but the reason that it just seems locally funny to me right now is Osip Levitovich is back on the Pro Tour, and when we worked together,
rightfully so.
Yeah, when we worked together, when he and he's actually who I've been playing with a little bit, but when we worked together when he top 8'd with the Izzatron deck. So I remember watching him play in real life for the first time, and on his 2nd turn he did nothing. On his 3rd turn he played his Signet with 1 open and his Signet open, and he didn't play a Signet on turn 2. And I'm like, I have literally never done that. where he's like, you never left up Remand mana and then had the Remand mana on the third turn? And I'm like, no, I've always played my Signet on the second turn. He's just like, you should check your percentages. And it was weird to me. It's like, why wouldn't you play your Signet on turn 2? Well, it's actually better to play your Signet on turn 3 sometimes. So, lesson out there, you don't have to tap all your mana every turn, even though it's often the right thing to do.
Who knew?
Who knew? Osip knew, and he won a Pro Tour.
I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time and focus on the various copycat decks. What do you think? What do you think of? Does that sound like a good place to start? Like Daniel Fournier's deck that he finished 7th which was not the highest finishing copycat, but I think it's the most normal build. Like it's the most base. It's the most. It's the version that you would most guess the contents of right out the gate.
Yeah. So Daniel played basically a Jeskai control deck. He's got cards like Torrential Gearhulk, Anticipate, Disallow, Glimmer of Genius, Harness Lightning, just like fast instance into Torrential Gearhulk, 26 lands. Very little catch-up, right? Only 1 Radiant Flames for catch-up. But then 4 Felidar Guardian, 4 Saheeli Rai. So it's basically just jamming Saheeli Rai and Felidar Guardian into what, in another context, in another format, would have been like a blue-red energy deck.
Right. I mean, this is a deck that has just 7 removal spells, 7 counter spells, and about the biggest concession that he's making to the combo is the use of 2 Oath of Jaces. And I think the Oath of Jace is actually the part of it. Like, if it were not for the Oath of Jace, this build is like, sure, I guess. But I think the Oath of Jace is actually inspired. Because when you play Oath of Jace on turn 3, you actually, and he cut an Anticipate and a Glimmer of Genius to make room for these 2 Oath of Jaces. But when you play an Oath of Jace on turn 3, your turn 4 Felidar Guardian is actually like a really big game. Because you can actually blank the Oath of Jace and then draw 3 more cards and then discard 2. But you're not just netting 1, you're getting a draw 3, discard 2. That's an incredible amount of selection. Like, that's a really cool interaction, right?
I agree.
That's it.
I would point out something, which is that not every deck is very good at pressure, right? So we've largely looked at decks that have cards like Lambhold Pacifist or Grim Flare. You have these like pretty impressive second turn plays. But against decks that aren't good at pressure, like most traditional builds of Aetherworks Marvel decks, I would actually put other Jeskai Saheeli decks in this category. If you just tap out and resolve a Saheeli Rai on turn 3, it's pretty bad for the opponent. Right? Oh, yeah. Like, you could just tick up. You're eventually going to find your combo pieces. The selection is quite meaningful, and getting additional loyalty on Saheeli is really annoying for the opponent. So, among other things, you do this too many times, they can no longer shock you out of the combo. Right? That's one thing. And then it actually changes the tone of the game, right? Like, if I just have Saheeli Rai, and I never find Felidar Guardian, but I just play an interactive game with you with my instance, I eventually play Torrential Gearhulk. You don't want me untapping with Torrential Gearhulk and Saheeli Rai both in play, right? That is a disaster for you in all likelihood.
Yep.
So that's an important thing to note if you're going to play this upcoming standard format. Like, just have a way to deal with Saheeli Rai on turn 3. Like, it's a thing.
Another interesting note for the Jeskai decks. Decommission, which is 2 and a white, instant, destroy target artifact or creature, and has Revolt. If a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, you gain 3 life. Decommission is a very important new tool for a Jeskai deck that uses Torrential Gearhulk. Being able to actually flash back your disenchant effect, because previous Jeskai decks often had to rely on Fragmentize as their only realistic artifact or enchantment removal. And being able to replay it because of it being an instant, very exciting new dimension.
We often think about these essentially blue-red control decks that are just splashing white for Felidar Guardian. It's just like, here's my whites for Felidar Guardian. Here, Daniel's got the Decommission. But I would just love to point out one other thing about this deck, which is that he's got 4 Spell Quellers in the sideboard. And I think these are a lot like when we saw Spell Queller in the top 8 of Proto Kaladesh. They're just really, really, really above expectation performers in decks like this. Like, you play Spell Queller in Blue-White Flash, it's great. The card is always great. But in Blue-White Flash, it's just another creature, and you're talking about a deck that has, like, awesome creatures, flash effects, and light countering. But basically, the cards that are good against a card in that deck are good against all the cards in that deck.
Yeah.
And, like, here's another 2/3 creature, whether it costs 3 or, something else. If you're going to play cards like Harness Lightning, it's good on turn 2, it's good on turn 3, it's good on turn 5. It's only not good against Gideon. But in this situation, you have a card where, like, if you play this against Aetherworks Marvel, for example, it's insane against them, right? Like, Aetherworks Marvel playing against this deck is very likely to try to fight you with cards like Negate. And Spell Queller is just like, oh, look at this. You can't negate me, but I can stop your Marvel.
Let's switch over to the 4-color copycat decks, if we could.
Yeah, so there's 2 very different decks. I mean, they're both 4-color copycat decks, but they're quite different from each other. Where do you want to start?
Robert Graves' fifth place copycat deck is it's a energy. It takes a very energy centric sort of path, using 4 Rogue Refiner and 4 Servant of the Conduit, as well as a shielded Aether Thief and a Whirler Virtuoso. And then he's, of course, attuned with Ether in order to help fuel the energy stuff. But he's also got a little bit of the Blink thing going, because the 2 Cloud Blazers provide, 4 Rogue Refiners, of course, but then 2 Cloud Blazers in addition, and then also 2 Prophetic Prisms, which is interesting. Both Felidar Guardian and Saheeli Rai can potentially blink Rogue Refiner or Prophetic Prism or Cloud Blazer. Or Oath of Nissa, for that matter.
Yeah, when I first saw this deck, it's got Attune with Aether, it's got Harness Lightning. I just looked at it over and over and over again. It's like, where's the Aetherworks Marvel? Like, this seems to be like the kind of deck where, like, it has a bunch of different ways to just win on turn 4. If it had those, and instead he just chose not to play it. Instead going in the Cloud Blazer direction. I find that to be curious, because he's investing in a bunch of cards that, I mean, A, would be great with Aetherworks Marvel, and B, I don't know. Shielded Aether Thief is not a card that I initially thought. It seems pretty cool in this deck, but... Oh,
see, I like Shielded Aether Thief. I think that's one of the sleepers. The fact that it's a 2-mana 0/4 flash, you're already, like, not that far off, right? Like you would, a 1-mana 0/4 flash would be a pretty sweet card. And the fact that you get an energy when you block, you'll often get 1 free energy from this thing.
Yeah, I think that's the shtick. You get a free energy.
But the fact that to me, the shtick is that you can tap this thing to draw a card. When you can turn your 0/4 into a card draw engine, like, that's pretty sweet, right? Like, that's normally the drawback of, like, a 0/4 would be that, like, oh, it's just so bad against a control deck or whatever. But this one is, like, actually a legitimate card drawing threat.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm a little puzzled on in this deck is, like, I'm just not seeing the payoff, right? Like, he's got a 4th color in green with Attune. I mean, I guess he's got Oath of Nissa, but, like, all, like, the energy sub theme is, like, it seems fairly minor to me. Like, I'm just not getting the payoff that whether you see an energy deck with, like, an amazing array of offensive creatures, or you're seeing energy being utilized to tap an Aetherworks Marvel, right? It's just, I don't know.
Well, this deck actually only has, it primarily is using energy to power Aether Hub and Servant of the Conduit. Its only other energy payoffs are 1 Shielded Aether Thief and 1 Whirler Virtuoso. I think it's
Rogue
actually...
Refiner is an energy guy, right?
Like Rogue Refiner doesn't give you any way to use the energy, though. I'm saying this only has 2 cards that let you convert energy into something good. Rogue Refiner, it's another source of energy. I mean, it's a 3/2 that gives you 2 energy and draws a card. But you can't turn that energy into anything.
That's where I'm coming from.
I agree with you. I think this deck needs... If you're going to go to all this trouble, and I'm not sure it's right to go to this much trouble, but assuming you're going to all this trouble, it's really surprising to me to only have 1 Whirler Virtuoso and 1 Shielded Aether Thief as payoffs.
Like, I mean, my experience of playing against Saheeli Rai, Felidar Guardian combo decks that have cards like Rogue Refiner and Attune with the Aether is that if you stop one combo, they're just going to tap and Ulamog you, So that my expectation is to see a different payoff, and it's the first week. We'll see these decks evolve, and maybe this is a direction we'll see persistently. But I just feel like with all the things that are potentially going on, especially in a deck with 4 Rogue Refiner, I can't get behind 2 Cloud Blazer. It just seems like low impact to me for what you could be doing for that amount of mana.
So there's actually a very different direction, no Cloud Blazers, but a very different direction taken by Tyler Hill, who his 4-color Saheeli deck is actually a Planeswalker deck with 4 Saheeli Rai, 3 Chandra Torch Defiance, 2 Nissa Vital Force, and then 9 Oaths, 4 Oath of Nissa, 3 Oath of Chandra, 2 Oath of Jace. So he's getting a lot of mileage out of the fact that you can Felidar Guardian and blink Oath of Chandra in order to kill another creature. You can also... Oh, go ahead.
I think this deck is extremely novel. I really like his combination of 4 Oath of Nissa, Terrarian, and Traverse the Uvenwald for early drops, because to make up for the fact he only has 22 lands. He's getting so much mileage out of these Oaths. And I feel like his deck, like, if he never gets the Felidar Guardian combo, I feel like his deck is just really just going to be able to hold its own against a lot of opponent decks. Like, just a Narnam Renegade, right? Like,
yeah, what do you think of that? The use of 2 Narnam Renegades, the 1/2 Death Touch for 1 that has Revolt +1/+1.
So if you get the +1/+1, I think that it's probably generally better than the Delirium one, which only gets played in certain situations, mid to late game. I mean, he's playing it specifically in, to discourage people from attacking, right? Like, I mean, I guess he has some like Curd Ape attack action sometimes against like a helpless opponent, but it's great Planeswalker defense. People don't want to run their good creature into this. It'll get around some decent removal. If it's a 2/3, you're not going to shock it.
So I think it's really clever for a couple of reasons. First, it makes great use of his stacked Oaths. When you play your 2nd Oath of Nissa or your 2nd Oath of Chandra, you get to trigger the Revolt of Narnam Renegade.
Absolutely.
Additionally, when you use Felidar Guardian for value, like on turn 5, you might just play Felidar Guardian to blink one of your Oaths, killing something. But the fact that you blinked it at all triggers Revolt. Felidar Guardian's ability technically triggers Revolt. Additionally, there's like a variety of just miscellaneous things like Tarion, but what's kind of exciting is that you can use Narnam Renegade as a quote-unquote removal spell, but it counts as a creature in your graveyard. This is not a deck that just has an abundance of creatures going to the graveyard early. It actually is that rare deck that wants a creature in order to help fuel Delirium. Right? Like, this is a deck that it's like, okay, yeah, Planeswalkers, enchantments, those types are easy, right? Creature is not the easiest type, and Narnam Renegade actually comes down early enough in trades and so you can use it to help fuel your Delirium. What I thought was kind of weird, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Implement of Combustion out of the sideboard seems like a surprising use of one of your 15 sideboard slots.
Yeah. I don't know what to say about that. It certainly can cantrip. I feel like I'd rather have a Terrarian there. I don't know, Patrick. I don't know what to say about this one.
What do you think about Release the Gremlins, though?
You know what it does do, though, right? Like that is that maybe people will play badly against it. And you can get their Saheeli Rai, right? Like it kind of does that.
Okay, that's it.
Like,
no. That's actually pretty clever. It is kind of a sweet anti-Saheeli Rai combo. That's a good call.
But like,
not combo, but interaction. I'm not saying it's worth
twice. It. Like that's the thing.
No. But you don't even need to get him. It can just sit and play. And they can't like get rid of it very easily because like maybe they would disenchant your authority if you were even playing white. But you're not playing white in this deck to the degree that you're playing colorless mana. You know, and the fact that you put down the implement, even if they destroy it, you're going to draw a card.
Like I feel like it's a little too clever because the implement requires 1 and 1, which is essentially 2, right? Whether you I guess you play it.
And you have to hold one open.
To hold one open, like for the same matter, you could just play a Walking Ballista. Like, which actually has a lot of upside. Like, you could definitely get someone once, right? But I just feel like you're not going to get him twice. So it's like not like I don't know. Like, yeah, it's Saheeli defense, but I don't think it's great Saheeli defense. I'd be much more interested in talking. I mean, I actually think that Tyler's a lot of really super cool stuff going on in this deck. Like Nahiri the Harbinger. I actually would almost wish I saw more of this, right? Among other things, Nahiri the Harbinger is a direct answer to the Authority of the Councils, right? Which is a useful thing if you're playing a Felidar Guardian combo deck. Secondly, it can actually go get your Felidar Guardian to complete the combo, which makes me kind of wish there were more, right? Because this card does 2 different things this deck would want to do.
The 16th place finisher actually played a Saheeli Rai deck, Eli Cases, who played a 4-color Saheeli deck that used 2 Nahiri's main deck, and you know, in an effort to do the exact things you're describing.
Yeah, I think that when we see the format kind of flatten out a little bit over time, we're going to see. I would guess we see more Nahiris in the Jeskai Planeswalker-ish sort of version, whether it's 3 colors or 4 colors. That card seems too. It's just really good against the cards that are good against you, and it's good at your strategy when those cards are not present.
So there is one more major archetype that we haven't touched on yet, which is Mardu Vehicles, which did put 1 in the top 8, and it was the only other deck to finish in the top 8. But Derek Moenda playing Mardu Vehicles. Which this is another one of those, even though it's quote-unquote Mardu Vehicles, has the ceremonious rejection out of the sideboard, since you already have Cultivator's Caravan and Aether Hub, and turning some of your mountains into Spirebluff Canals is just so low of a cost. A lot of cards that were already legal. This is basically an update to the existing Mardu Vehicles deck with a few twists, right? Like there are a few new aspects. What do you think of 4X Heart of Kiran?
I mean, Heart of Kiran seems like we're just at least superficially taking the Smuggler's Copter slot there. Although he does have Gideon to power it up.
I mean, it's also, I just think Heart of Kiran is an excellent card for a deck that has 4 Veteran Motorists, 3 Thalia Heretic Athars, 1 DePaula Pilot Exemplar, 4 Toolcraft Exemplar, 4 Scrap Heap Scrounger. This deck is actually really smart in its selection of creatures, set up so that almost everybody crews both Heart of Kiran and Cultivator's Caravan. Like that's actually pretty a pretty effective way to do it. I like the Heart of Kiran a lot in this deck, and Veteran Motorist was born to crew a Heart of Kiran, because when you have if you play a Heart of Kiran on turn 2, there are going to be people who hold up 2 black because they want to grasp the darkness it, right? And they can't even play Liliana that turn because your Heart of Kiran will just kill it. So they hold up their 2 black, but then if you just drop Veteran Motorist and immediately crew the Heart of Kiran will wake up as a 5/5. There will never be a chance to grasp a darkness it. And even if they grasp Darkness the Motorist, you'll get that 5-point hit in, and you won't miss an attack next turn either because you'll just crew it with whatever else you play.
One of the things that I like the best about this deck in particular, well, I guess this archetype and this deck in particular, number one, here's a deck that can legitimately play 4 Shock, right? Like, that's just a card that goes straight in. We've seen some little compromised numbers of Shocks. Shock is the lowest cost, easiest to play anti-copycat card you can play in Standard right now. Even if they tick up the first time, you can get Saheeli with an open Shock. But secondly, Derek has 4 copies of Unlicensed Disintegration in the main deck. I think Unlicensed Disintegration is just the bee's knees.
It's one of the best cards. I mean, it's got the whole Blightning thing going.
Unbelievable in the current Standard. This is a card that can kill Planeswalkers. It kills it kills 1/4 creatures. It does it all, and it's instant speed.
I love that. That's all. That's what, that constitutes all these days.
I mean, here's a card. It's awesome. Like, if your opponent's like, what if your opponent is just like getting beaten up by your awesome 2-drops? You're putting them on the ropes with your awesome vehicles. He's like, all right, I'm going to stabilize with the most powerful threat that I can play in this format, Torrential Gear Hulk, and you're like, thanks for the 3 life, brah. In with everybody. Like, I don't know. I love that card in this format, and I think that one of the reasons that Mardu Vehicles is... I predict Mardu Vehicles will be one of the strong-performing decks at the Pro Tour, and it's because of Unlicensed Disintegration. Among the other 71 awesome cards that this archetype can play.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's Planeswalkers. Like, that's...
Oh, yeah. It's just a super powerful card. Did you get a chance to check out any of the Esper Aggro? I guess an attempt to make blue-white great again. This is a Archangel Avacyn, Gideon Ally of Zendikar, Spell Queller, Thraben Inspector, Stasis Snare. Very similar deck in many regards, but with the added twist of Metallic Rebuke.
Yeah, so Scrap Heap Scrounger is kind of a passive way to get Metallic Rebuke online.
Thraben Inspector.
Yeah, Heart of Kirin. I gotta tell you, I'm much less excited about Esper Aggro.
Really?
Yeah, it's just
4 Toolcraft Exemplars for the beatdown.
I feel like the Toolcraft Exemplars are coming in for 1 more than you're gonna want in this deck. It's just it doesn't have in my limited view right now. This deck is worse at doing what Mardu Vehicles wants to do than Mardu Vehicles.
But what about the black-white version, which is a similar deck, but instead of Spell Queller and Metallic Rebuke, they have Liliana the Last Hope and Fatal Push, as well as Anguished Unmaking. This is like Brian Paolucci,
I think, the 11th place deck.
Yeah, and he's got the same Scrap Heap Scrounger, Gideon, Archangel Avacyn stuff, the Raven Inspector, all that, but then uses Fatal Push, Anguished Unmaking, and Liliana the Last Hope.
I actually like this deck way more than Esper Aggro. Couple of reasons. Number one, I super respect 3 copies of Thalia Heretic Cathar in the main deck. I think it's a good lead-in. I think that over time, if this deck ends up consistently being a performer, we're going to see some smoothing out of the numbers, because I have a hard time getting behind 2 copies of Gideon Ally of Zendikar, but that's a different.
It's a little surprising.
But 4 copies of Anguished Unmaking, I like a lot for, I think, all the reasons that probably don't have to be elucidated right now. Like, you can hit either side of the copycat combo. You could break up, an Aetherworks Marvel. You can, it's literally the most flexible card as long as you have 3 life to play with. And then at the top end, again, I think the numbers are going to have to get smoothed out, because if this is a deck that wants to invest in Archangel Avacyn at the 5, I can't imagine it doesn't want 4 copies, especially if it's going to play 4 copies of Selfless Spirit, right? Like, like those guys are peanut butter and chocolate to me. So I think that this deck's probably got some legs. I like the. I mean, when's the last time we saw 4 Transgress the Mind and a bunch of Kalitas coming out of the sideboard? You know, which is not surprising. We've seen many formats where those guys were coming together out of the sideboard, but we haven't seen them in a while. And I think that this is a shell I could potentially get behind. Like, I feel like some cards are just going to like go by the wayside. I think Aether Geode Miner is either going to end up being really cool or not good enough. Right.
It is a little surprising to play that guy without any energy stuff. It's just straight up for Val. And I get that he wants to have another way to power up the Heart of Kirin without playing out of the 3-drop. But it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't mean, like, it's hard for me to love that guy when you only have 2 Gideons in the deck.
It's hard for me to get behind. Like, look, we've already got Heart of Kirin and Scrap Heap Sprounger and Selfless Spirit as 2-drops. Arguably, every one of those guys is superior to Aether Geode Miner. If you're going to play another 3-power creature, I almost feel like I can eat the Legend rule on the 4th Thalia Heretic Cathar, because this deck doesn't have a lot of the other defenses we've seen. It's the copycat combo, right? Like, there's no Authority of the Councils in the 75.
Help me understand why use the Hope? Why use Hope of Gurapur?
I don't know, because I don't feel like this deck is getting... Like, I feel like Hope of Gurapur is the kind of card that you want to play... Like, I don't know, maybe against... What cards do you want to resolve that Hope of Gurapur is going to get you clear in? Right? Like, that's what this card's for, right?
I don't know. Dude, for all I know, it might just be an early tempo play that can block 2 on flyers. I don't know. It's not that bad, right? I mean...
Yeah, it kind of is. It's a sideboard card. Sideboard cards have to be 4 times as good as main deck cards.
I'm just saying, I just don't know. I don't know for sure. I wish I knew better what the Hope of Gurapur is. What is it up to?
Like, there are definitely decks where this card is probably going to be good. I'm just, like, there's just not a card in this 75 that I would want to invest a sideboard card to use in this. I guess in the matchups where you would theoretically have Hope of Gurapur, getting a 1-drop flyer down could be good. You just, like, get 6 damage in or something, and then eventually be like, all right, I want to resolve my Gideon now. Like, maybe that's cool.
I don't know, man. I'm just not as sold that it's about the ability.
So you think it's just Cloud Sprite.
So what do you think?
Legendary Cloud Sprite. We're in there.
Dude, Bant Eldrazi, finishing 30th place, Kyler Fields. But the thing about this Bant Eldrazi deck that I think will delight you, 2 Gisela the Broken Blade and a Bruna the Fading Light. Not to mention 3 Authority of the Consul's main deck and the return of Tomio Field Researcher.
I think that I find it amusing that you think these are the things I would like about this deck.
No. So here's the reasons why I think it. This isn't even a joke. So
no, I like all those cards. Like, but
of course. So Bruna plus Gisela, obviously your heart, right? But Authority of the Consuls. Well, I think you are definitely already on board. You have to love how clever Eldrazi Displacer plus Authority of the Consuls is.
I can appreciate that.
That's an engine. Now you can just go off every 3 mana.
I just appreciate Authority of the Consuls in Reality Smasher. Right?
Yes.
I'm in for 5, and you're not going to block.
Correct.
Your guy is tapped. Like,
yes.
I like that. But this is the thing. It's like, Kyler's got this crazy top end, right? He's got an Elder Deep Fiend, 3 Reality Smashers,
3 Thought-Knot Seers,
3 Archangel Avacyn, 2
Bruna and 2 Gisela,
and like 2 Cataclysmic Gearhulk in the sideboard, right? Like, he's got
Johnny Unyielding in the sideboard.
I cannot imagine he ever gets the triggers on Linvala the Preserver, though. Like, that seems just like a 14-card sideboard to me. But I feel like this deck has got access to so many gas cards. I would want to be able to predict which ones I was going to draw. That's actually my contention with this deck. I feel like Bruna's not going to get paid off some of the time, right? It's like, oh, here's my expensive card.
Well, this deck has selection, right? It has 2 Sanctum of Ugins.
I agree that those cards are present. I feel like
that's isn't that super sketchy? Am I missing something? The only cards that he has that can trigger Sanctum of Ugin at all, 1 Elder Deep Fiend.
My point is, as much as I love, I mean, I could totally get behind like sideboarding 6 Brunas and Giselles, right? Like I just super get behind that. But if I'm going to invest a bunch of these cards in main deck, I think I want like 3 Elder Deep Fiends. Like just they're consistent plays. This deck actually has exactly the fuel you want to be playing with those cards. And
well, plus it would make your Sanctum of Ugin so much better.
Well, yeah,
you could never trigger them.
So like I think this. First of all, I think it's awesome in the sense that we kind of forgot that the Eldrazi were there. I think that that's a mistake. The Eldrazi should be enforced. There should be some great stuff coming out of that tribe. I just think that if I were going to play a deck like this, which is committing to multiple colors, right? Like he actually needs some work out of Fortified Village, Botanical Sanctum.
Well, this is one of those. This is one of those
wastes, right? These
are. I was going to say this is one of those waste decks.
Like you can't be jimmying around left and right with some of these top end threats. I think because this is also the kind of deck it's just designed to tap out. Like I'm going to tap out and I'm going to I have tempo. I'm going to seize tempo. I'm going to push. This isn't the kind of deck that sits around backwards and be like, I'm going to sit around and look for the card, exactly the card that I want. It doesn't even have the cards to do that. I think that because of that, you need to help your deck help you, and you're not helping your deck help you if you have half a combo with Sanctum of Ugin and Bruna, which costs a bazillion mana that just doesn't pay you off sometimes. And I think that's going to happen too much.
I'm surprised nobody's combining Bruna with Rishgar. Rishgar, Pima Renegade just seems like such a sweet way to actually play Bruna ahead of schedule.
Done. I'm just going to go. I like both of those cards.
If you just play turn 1 Thraben Inspector, turn 2 Walking Ballista, turn 3 your Rishgar Pima Renegade, you're already there, man. You haven't even had a chance to get an angel in your graveyard. You're just already there. I think that this has been a pretty impressive first week. What do you think, man?
I think that the diversity is inspiring. I'm glad that we didn't just see mono copycat decks. Copycat decks didn't even win, but it's super viable. There's at least 2 or 3 different takes for that archetype. I love the winning deck. I have one question for you.
Yeah.
With the data we have right now, this second, is Walking Ballista the best card in the new set?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're only going to count it with the data we have here, you're talking about not my judgment, my assessment, but rather just, Walking Ballista was the most successful card from the new set, I think.
So when I say the data we have here, I don't just mean the outcome of this one tournament. I mean, all the things we know, including this tournament.
Maybe. I don't know. I think the format will adapt to Walking Ballista. I think Walking Ballista is amazing and one of the better cards, but I would not be so sure that Walking Ballista is the true number one, not because of it not being great. I think it is great. I think that we are going to see – I think we have only scratched the surface. I think that there is some busted stuff in this set that is yet to come.
Good enough for me. All right.
Awesome, man. I got you ready for the Pro Tour. Dude, I'm pumped.
Next week, Patrick will be coming from Dublin. So,
I'll be back.
Along with the rest of Team Top Level.
Yes. Yep. Make sure to check us back out next Thursday. But until then, if you could do us a solid and share us on all this stuff,
Yeah. So, we're Top Level Podcast on Twitter. We're Top Level Podcast on Facebook. We're Top Level Podcast on Patreon. Please subscribe on YouTube or iTunes or whatnot. We love bringing this to you every week. I'm Michael
And
Flores.
Patrick Chapin. See you guys next week, man.
Bye-bye.
Great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind.